My mother-in-law slid a white envelope across the Christmas dinner table, smiled the kind of smile that knows exactly what it's doing, and said, "Before this family puts anything in his name, we think your son should take a DNA test." My 10-year-old son was sitting right there. 22 people heard it. Both sides of the family. Candles lit. Turkey on the table. My son looked at me first, then at his father, then at the envelope. He was old enough to understand. I watched him understand it in real time, and something in my chest cracked clean through. My name is Dana Mercer. I am 38 years old. This is the story of how my in-laws tried to strip my son of his place in their family at a Christmas dinner table, and how a hospital document I had found 3 months earlier, in a box they never should have left unlocked, ended every word they had left to say. They didn't know what I was holding. Not until I put it down in front of them. I married into the Mercer family 12 years ago in a ceremony that was beautiful and correct and attended by people who had already decided what they thought of me. My husband, Patrick, was the youngest of 2 sons raised in a large Victorian house in Greenwich, Connecticut, the kind of house with a name, actual maintenance staff, and a portrait of Patrick's grandfather in the front hallway that everyone was expected to acknowledge when they entered. My mother-in-law, Vivian, ran that house the way generals run campaigns. Everything was intentional. Every seating arrangement, every gift, every comment that landed a little sideways, none of it was accidental. She had a talent for making you feel the blade without ever seeing her reach for it. My father-in-law, Edward, was quieter, more careful, and had spent decades being the reasonable one, the man who smoothed things over after Vivian sharpened them. He had a warmth that felt genuine until you noticed it was only ever extended to the right people at the right times. Patrick's brother, Cole, had married a woman named Stephanie who had figured out the Vivian system early and complied with it fully. Cole and Stephanie had 2 biological children who were referenced constantly at family gatherings as the benchmark against which everything else was measured. And then there was my son, Noah. Noah was born 10 months into our marriage. He had my eyes, my mother's cheekbones, and a laugh that filled any room he was in. He also had darker skin than Patrick's family expected. My grandmother was black, my coloring runs warm, and Noah inherited that. It was never discussed directly. It was only ever discussed through omission, and the particular way Vivian would pause before including him in statements about the family. By the time Noah was 3, I had learned to read the pauses. The first moment that told me clearly where we stood happened when Noah was 5. The Mercer family was having portraits taken, a formal thing, professional photographer, the kind that ends up framed in the hallway. Vivian pulled me aside before we started and said, pleasantly, "I was thinking Noah might be more comfortable playing in the garden while we do the family groupings. He gets restless, doesn't he?" Noah was not restless. He was 5. And he was being excluded from a family portrait at 5 years old. I said, "He's family. He'll be in the photos." I said it quietly. Vivian smiled and said of course, she just wanted him to be comfortable. He was in the photos. But she had said it. And I did not forget. The second moment came when Noah was 7, at a birthday dinner for Edward. Vivian was describing the family history to some guests, the Mercer lineage, the Connecticut roots, the generations, and she said, gesturing around the table, "Of course, Cole's children carry it all forward." She did not look at Noah. She did not include him. He was sitting 4 seats away eating his dinner. I looked at Patrick. He was nodding at something someone else had said. I reached under the table and put my hand over Noah's. He kept eating. He didn't ask about it until the car ride home, when he said, quietly, "Why didn't Grandma say my name?" I told him Grandma sometimes forgot to think before she spoke. It was the most honest answer I could give a 7-year-old. The third moment was a comment Vivian made to my sister-in-law Stephanie, loud enough for me to hear, at a 4th of July gathering when Noah was 9. She said, "He's a sweet boy. He's just so different from the others." Stephanie said, "Mm." Nothing else. I was standing 6 feet away holding a glass of iced tea that I set down very carefully on the nearest surface. I said nothing. I went to find Noah. He was in the yard with the other kids. He was fine. He was always fine, which was its own kind of heartbreak. He had learned to navigate it without being taught how. The Christmas dinner was Noah's 10th birthday month. Vivian had planned the gathering with her usual precision: 22 guests, the good china, a seating arrangement that put our immediate family directly across from Edward and Vivian. I had cooked nothing. For the first time in 12 years, I had arrived as a guest only, because something in me had stopped volunteering. The dinner was 40 minutes in when Vivian reached under her chair for her bag, produced the white envelope, and placed it on the table in front of her. She did it the way you set down a document in a meeting. Deliberate. Timed. She slid it toward Noah's place and said what she said. Noah looked at it. Then at me. His voice, when he spoke, was very small. He said, "Mom. Why are they saying that?" I looked at Patrick. He was looking at his plate. That silence, his specific silence in that specific moment, was the thing that finished something in me that I had been holding together for years. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I looked at Vivian. I looked at the envelope. I looked at my son's face. I said, "Excuse us for a moment." I took Noah's hand. I walked him to the hallway. I crouched down to his level and I told him clearly and quietly that there was nothing wrong with him, that the people at that table were confused about something important, and that I was going to go back in and handle it. I told him to wait in the study. He nodded. He trusted me. That trust was the thing I was carrying when I walked back into that dining room. I sat down. I reached into my bag. I placed a document on the table. 3 months earlier, I had been at the Mercer house helping organize materials for Edward's surprise 65th birthday party. Vivian had asked me to sort through a storage room boxes of old documents, photographs, correspondence. I had been thorough because I am always thorough. In the third box, behind a set of financial folders from the 1990s, I found a sealed manila envelope. It was not addressed. It had been opened and resealed with tape that had yellowed with age. I opened it. Inside was a hospital birth record from 1969, and a sealed adoption finalization document from Connecticut Family Court, dated 1971. The name on the adoption record was Edward Mercer. The biological parents listed were unknown. The adoptive parents were Edward's listed parents, both deceased. Edward Mercer had been adopted at age 2. He had spent 63 years as the patriarch of a family built around bloodline mythology. And he had never told anyone. I photographed every page with my phone. I put the envelope back exactly as I had found it. I told no one. I placed the photographs in a folder on my laptop and I waited, without knowing exactly what I was waiting for. I understood on Christmas night what I had been waiting for. The document I placed on the table was a printed copy of the adoption record. I slid it to the center. I looked at Vivian, then at Edward, and I said, "Funny. Because if anyone at this table needs answers tonight, it's not my son." Edward's face went the particular white of a man who has just watched something he buried 30 years ago surface in front of 22 people. Vivian looked at the document. She looked at Edward. She said nothing. Her hands, which had been folded on the table, separated and went flat. The table was completely silent. 22 people, and not one of them spoke. I stood up. I said, "Noah is Patrick's son. He is my son. He has been sitting at this table for 10 years being made to feel like a question that needed answering. That ends now." I picked up my bag. I went to the study. I took my son's hand, and we walked out of that house together. Patrick called me 4 times that night. I let them go to voicemail. The messages moved from defensive to confused to something that almost sounded like he understood what had happened. He came to our house the next morning and sat at the kitchen table and said, "I should have said something. I should have said it a long time ago. I told him he was right. We talked for 2 hours. That conversation was the beginning of a longer reckoning between us that I won't fully detail here, except to say that it is ongoing, and that he has shown up differently since that night. Edward called me once, 2 weeks later. He did not address the adoption record directly. He said he hoped we could find a way through this. I told him the way through was honesty, and that he had been the one blocking the path. He was quiet. He said he understood. I don't know if he did. Vivian has not called. 3 of the 22 guests at that dinner reached out to me privately in the weeks following. One was Patrick's aunt, a woman named Frances, who said she had always known something was wrong at those gatherings, and that she was ashamed she had never said so. I told her I appreciated her saying it now. Noah asked me, about a week after Christmas, whether Grandpa Edward had known he was adopted. I told him yes, I believed he had. Noah thought about that for a moment and then said, so he knew what it felt like to wonder if you belong, and he still let them do that to me. I didn't have a good answer to that. I told him that was an important question, and that he was right to ask it. He nodded and went back to his book. He is 10 years old and he is already asking the questions it took me 12 years to form. I live in the same house. Noah is still in the same school. He had a good spring. I lost the version of my marriage that could pretend everything was fine, if we just didn't press on certain places. I lost 12 years of patience that I had spent like currency on people who were never going to give me a fair exchange rate. What I gained is a son who watched his mother walk back into a room and place the truth on the table without raising her voice. I don't know exactly what he will carry from that night. But I know he will carry that. Some people build their entire identity around a bloodline that doesn't belong to them. They build the mythology so high they can't see what it's doing to the people standing at the base of it. My son was never the question in that family. He was always the answer. I was just waiting for the right moment to say so out loud.